All right, as we jump in here, I want to say that I was watching Scrooge the other night, and at the very end, I'm sure everybody's seen it, Bill Murray going through his visits with the ghosts and all that. And then he's talking to camera. He's like, I get it. I finally get it. I don't know what my curmudgeonly attitude has been the last couple of years. I think it's old man kind of stuff that I love New Year's Day and those five bowl games and everything else, but that's rear view mirror stuff for me. I get it now. I get it. This is going to be the greatest thing to happen, not just to college football, but to sports in some time. And before we really dig in here, I want to say hello to, I think, the perfect person to really celebrate the arrival of this playoff. You know her well if you spend any time following sports on social media. She's one of the great follows out there. She is one of the stars of the Lebitard Show on Meadowlark Media. She's a fantasy film and F1 enthusiast. She is a pie maker, as I understand it, and of course a podcaster. She's Jessica Smetana. What's happening, sister? How are you?
Oh, I'm great. I can't believe the 12-team college football playoff is finally here after waiting and waiting and waiting. We're finally going to get to see some games finally.
Yes, and this works neatly for you as a Notre Dame Fighting Irish enthusiast, and I'm an Indiana Hoosier alum, so looking forward to talking about that. But before we jump into that game and even the 12-team tournament, I just have to say, as a broad statement here, that this is, again, not just the best thing to happen to college football, but sports, since I don't know when. What even compares really in your lifetime? If I do the last half century, I made a little list to see, and I don't know that anything compares
Ooh.
with it. How say
What?
you?
Well, I want to know what's on your list. I think one of the cool things, you're obviously an Indiana alum. I'm a Notre Dame alum. Indiana and Notre Dame playing in the first ever home playoff site of this 12-team college football playoff. That's going to be a trivia question in 20 years. Who played in the
Hmm.
first ever college football playoff, home opening round game? We're going to remember it because it's both of our universities. How about that?
I was at the 1991 Indiana Hoosiers Notre Dame Fighting Irish game. Why? Because I'm very old.
I wasn't
And
born
so
yet. Yeah.
Yeah, so I remember that game. But yeah, generally speaking, I have devoted my time. I love sports. I think they're great, but I intend to leave the world of sports a little bit better than I found it. And so that's why I've come up with things like, for the NFL, the loser bowl. Instead of a Pro Bowl, we should just have the two worst teams play each other, and the winner of that game gets the first overall pick in the next spring's draft. And I think that the NBA All-Star game, which everybody is belly aching about, should be replaced by a one-on-one tournament. And that would be great. So on and so forth. But the things that have already happened to sports in our lifetime, it wouldn't be free agency. That's better for the players, but not as much for we fans. We like the familiar faces in the places where we know them to exist. I, as a human being, celebrate free agency. I don't think it's um, great, though, for the fans and salary caps. I think there's some pros and cons there. Baseball, the pitch clock is good, doesn't compare with a 12-team playoff. The expansion of the playoffs in baseball isn't any better. The DH, I don't love the DH. I don't know. I mean, I could go on and on with these. I think the bottom line is that this is going to be the greatest event to be added to the already great sports calendar, that, I mean, at least in a decade, right? At least in a quarter century. How say you?
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right. I think that I love I was very apprehensive about 12 teams for a while.
Hmm.
I'm still apprehensive because we haven't actually seen it happen yet. So I'm just waiting to reserve judgment. But I think one thing you can say for sure is that this college football season had so many more games with playoff stakes attached to them than in years prior. So that is obviously, I think, automatically a win. Like, people were invested in the Mountain West Championship game this year in a way that I've never seen in my lifetime. So that's definitely a win and goes in the win column. But yeah, I can't think of anything. It's like you get four extra little mini Super Bowls now. And I love that they're on home sites. That's been the thing since, they first announced this, that I was like, I'm apprehensive about this, but the fact that they're actually putting the first four games at college football stadiums and they're not putting it in neutral sites or NFL stadiums, I think that's something that is going to be really special about this weekend because it's Notre Dame Stadium. obviously Beaver Stadium. You've got Ohio State hosting a night playoff game on Saturday night, and then a game at Texas between Texas and Clemson in Austin. So I'm excited about the home sites. There's going to be all the pageantry of college football, the fans. But one thing that did make me a little apprehensive about Notre Dame hosting Indiana, you're going to like this. Notre Dame announced today they're handing out gold towels to wave in the stadium, a la the terrible towel. Now, Kurt Signetti, you know he is a Yinzer. And I am afraid
Yes.
that Notre Dame fans are now going to be unwittingly waving terrible towels. And Kurt Signetti, it's actually going to spur him on to be better, to coach better in this game. This is going to be some sort of like backwards jinx that Notre Dame is committing on itself.
Yeah, it's sort of like the Nirvana slash Pearl Jam syndrome, that when something splashes in a really big way and transcends just pop culture for a couple of weeks and really digs its heels in like Nirvana and Pearl Jam did, it then spawns lesser iterations, and each one is worse than what preceded it. And so, much like the terrible towel, you see Homer hankies, which had some value to Minnesota Twins fans, but everybody else who comes out with their dumb towels and everything else, you're basically Creed. That's
Oh
what you're doing.
God,
In Notre
don't
Dame, you're
say
Creed right
that.
now. That's right.
Oh, I don't want to be Creed. Although they did have that one great halftime performance in the Cowboys Thanksgiving game like 20 years ago that goes viral every Thanksgiving. So I don't know, maybe this will be our Creed halftime show performance.
Who is, and it's easy for me to say it's the Indiana Hoosiers for obvious. I mean, listen, Coach Signetti is a delight, dude. That dude, he's like, there's first there was Mark Cuban. He come over from Pittsburgh to Indiana University, but then he get replaced by Coach Signetti as the greatest Yinzer to put his boots on Bloomington soil that I can think of. Is that now America's college football team? My biggest resentment about the playoff in the Hoosiers, I've done my best to not bellyache about who they have to play and when and everything else. It's remarkable, the Cinderella story, that they're in it at all is great fun, and I don't want to diminish that by being like, they should have instead gotten to play blah, whatever it is. The
Yeah,
worst thing about it is that it is the first game. If it were the last one, at least I could enjoy the playoff and that
that's
my
true.
team is in it. But they're, 3.5 hours after they're in it, they're very likely to be out of it. But who
Oh, I
is,
don't think so. I think,
you don't think, huh?
I mean, look, I think Notre Dame is a great football team. I think that they're extremely talented, and Marcus Freeman's done a phenomenal job. But look, I saw Notre Dame lose to Northern Illinois this year. Anything can happen on Friday night. I would not put any money on this game, bet it one way or another. Going back to your Yinzer savior, Kurt Signetti, my favorite part of him being in Indiana is his offensive coordinator, Tino Sunseri, being in Indiana.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is a full Yinzer staff he's got there. It almost makes me just a teeny tiny bit a little tickled to see them playing a home playoff game against, or
I
an
know
away playoff game
Tino.
against Notre Dame.
Tino, I remember old Sal Sinceri, number 66, playing middle linebacker for the Pitt Panthers way back when
Hmm.
against the Fighting Irish and otherwise. Tino, then he goes over to IU. Now he's out to LA to be
Yeah, it's a long way
the
from
UCLA
Pittsburgh.
Bruins. He's kind of following my path. He's a copycat.
True.
Yeah, so we'll dig in on that game. But who
Okay.
is to you is like, is it Scattaboo? Is everybody about to? Because I do think that college football, I mean, the ratings indicate it's a little less popular than the NFL. I think there are some people that are going to be tuning in and watching some teams for the first time.
For sure.
Is there anyone we should circle out there for people? That I mean, like Gunnar Stockton, all of a sudden, the Georgia quarterback, or likely Georgia quarterback,
Yeah,
it would seem next week. It seems like it's tracking that way. I mean, who are the names that Ashton Genty? I bet a lot of people have never watched Boise State play 2 snaps of football. Who out there are you excited about looking at, and who do you think Football America should get behind and start rooting for
I
in
mean,
the first week of this playoff?
I love the Boise State story. They get to host or they get to play in a big time college football game. They get the bye week. I think when the bracket was announced as like, oh, it's gonna be 12 teams in the top four, champions get the bye weeks. Everyone's like, oh, well, the group of five team's gonna be the team that doesn't get the bye week. No, Boise State gets the bye week because other than that loss to Oregon, which was a really close game, they beat the crap out of everyone this year. They beat UNLV twice. And Genty had the most insane college football season. I don't want to rehash the whole Heisman debate, but he is the type of player that people will watch in this playoff and they'll be like, huh, that guy's really good. Maybe he should have won the Heisman after all. He's
Hmm.
like, he's going to end up with like 180 yards and 3 touchdowns, no matter who they play, whether it's SMU or Penn State, because that's just how good he's been this entire season. And I'm not saying Boise State will win that game because I do think if it's Penn State, Penn State's really good. I know we make fun of James Franklin a lot. They can't win the big games against the Ohio States and the Michigans, et cetera, but that's a good football team. And I do think they have a pretty good path to a quarterfinal or a semifinal. But yeah, Genty for sure. You mentioned Scatabo. He's phenomenal as well. There's just, I mean, Oregon's got so many dudes. They've got so many fast wide receivers on that team that could just rip apart either team that they have to play against. But they actually, I think, kind of sneaky got screwed the most out of all this. The number one overall seed has to
I
play the
agree.
winner of Tennessee, Ohio State. I don't know. I wouldn't want to play Tennessee or Ohio State in any round, let alone that's your first game after a month off of football.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you is among the teams that actually can win all the games that may go in front. I mean, like I hope Indiana can knock off the Irish and it would be a trip to see them show up in Athens and take a shot at the Dogs and all of that. I don't think there is a sequence of games that would end with the Indiana Hoosiers and Coach Sig holding up the national title trophy. I don't even know. Do they have a new trophy for this one now?
It's still like that gold, like long pedestal gold
Oh, it is.
thing. Yeah, it's the same
The thing that looks
trophy.
like a joint, which would be perfect for Coach Sig to smoke it right at the end
True.
to
Yeah,
punctuate victory with that. That is
true.
always that does look like that. Better, but when they used to hold that glass thing up and it would fall off,
Oh yeah. But it
sometimes
was a
that was
much prettier trophy. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, the crystal football
yeah.
obviously is an elite trophy too. But anyways, yeah, I think Notre Dame is like a sneaky favorite by a lot of college football people because a lot of folks think that if they can beat Indiana, their path is actually pretty
Yeah.
favorable given Carson Beck probably is too hurt to play. I mean, I would be shocked if he plays in the Sugar Bowl. Um, just wow, that injury looked terrible. And then Notre Dame or whoever wins that game would play the winner of, Penn State / SMU and Boise State. So that side of the bracket could be a little funky. On the other side of the bracket, though, like the Oregon, Arizona State, Texas side, like, man, I don't know. I think Oregon is really, really good, but if they're playing a, matchup against Ohio State, second time they're seeing them this season, Ohio State's a really talented football team. I don't think you can sort of take that for granted. So I don't know. I'm glad that Notre Dame, and I'm glad on your behalf, Indiana's on the other side of the football bracket, even though like Georgia's defense is still elite, even if Beck is out. And Georgia has been playing all season with a quarterback that's just given the ball away, I don't know, 9 times, some multiple 3 interception games. So it's not like playing without an elite quarterback is something new for them either.
I think first of all, to the point you made a minute ago about like that Oregon got me, I think several teams in the mix here have the right to complain about things. I think Oregon running the table and having a tougher path than Penn State or Texas is they have a right to be sort of outraged about that. I think though that you mentioned James Franklin and like, well, they should be able to take care of business in against SMU, but it does make me think. I mean, Jimmy Franklin has lost a lot of big time games, big
Hmm.
spot games. This is one, and the pressure, the curse of Sposta, it lands squarely on his shoulders. They have to win this game. Or, I guess it's a classic talk show kind of conversation to have is like, who has more pressure on him, Ryan Day or James Franklin? The answer is both of them.
Yeah.
Both have more pressure than Marcus Freeman. He's locked up long term now with Notre Dame. I don't get the sense that Irish fans would riot if Notre Dame loses this game, but I do think that would be the death knell for Ryan Day. I don't think there's any question about that. I mean, how much jeopardy do you think James Franklin is in if they lose at home to SMU?
Oh, I think it would be terrible. But I think James Franklin, he's won the vast majority of games that Penn State's been favored in. And like something like 32-1 is his record against teams when Penn State's the favorite. It's the games when he's the underdog where he just can't win one of those games. You can't beat the
Right.
teams like Penn State's in that like elite weight class level that just can't prove that they belong up there with like the Ohio States and the Georgias and like those top five teams, but they're solidly like right behind them, which is a really frustrating place to be. And as a Notre Dame fan, like semi-relatable. Notre Dame's won a couple of those games, but often, when they have made it to the playoff in the past, they're losing to the Alabama and the Clemson and like they're super elite, number 2, 3 recruiting class in the country teams. So that's super frustrating for Franklin, but I think Ryan Day, like we joked about this on our podcast this week. Like Ohio State is a hostile environment on Saturday night. Everyone is hostile, not just about Tennessee fans coming in,
Oh
but
yeah.
at Ryan Day. Like there's just going to be so much hostility in the air in that game because they completely blew it in the last game of the season against Michigan. I mean, I watched a replay of the second half of that game on Fox last weekend because there was no football on Saturday morning, and even knowing the outcome, I still can't believe Ohio State lost that game. It was just absurd. They could not do anything offensively. It was brutal to watch. So obviously everyone's mad at him. It's a bad day when you're scrolling on Twitter and you see Ryan Day's address pop up 20 times because Ohio State fans are pissed and they're posting his home address. So bad situation, I think, if he loses. But same with Franklin. And the other thing about Franklin that is kind of going underrated is like that's the first game Saturday morning. So you lose the first game Saturday morning, the whole world is just laughing at you. And SMU is a team that a lot of people didn't think should make the playoff. They thought Alabama should make it, even though they lost to Oklahoma in week 13. So either way, one of those Big Ten teams loses their head coach is going to be in a dark, dark place.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say is I do think that they got the big thing right, which was that because you're in the SEC and by virtue of being in the SEC, you have some stiff competition along the way. And if you beat some percentage of those teams, then to some voices out there, Paul Feinbaum, Nick Saban, will then make a case for, well, that team belongs in the playoff against ahead of SMU. That's not the way the cookie crumbles. To your point about Boise State, not just making it, obviously, but getting a bye and people being raw about that. It's the same thing as the example I always use, early 90s NFL playoffs. On one side of the bracket, the Cowboys and 49ers, and on the other side, the San Diego Chargers upset the Steelers. So that was the team waiting to play the winner of the Cowboys and Niners in the NFC title game. During that 3 hours, nobody said, let's just run it back with these two teams because they're obviously both better than San Diego, than the Chargers are. It's just the way the thing broke this year. I think that's right. And I think that putting SMU in over Bama is a statement going forward that's meaningful. I think they have to adjust. The Ducks may wring their hands for the next 2 decades if it doesn't go their way this year, because a lot of people are saying, well, they have to tweak things before next year because it isn't right that Texas and Penn State have a back. That's not going to do anything to help Oregon. They don't get to run it back next year with this group of guys. Who is the upset you see out there, if you see one at all? Do you see 1, 2? Who's in the most peril of going down by Saturday night? The bookmakers have some pretty big numbers out there. The biggest one out there is the Buckeyes laying 7 to Tennessee. And I think they get it right there. I think the Vols, I know that I say what I say about the SEC. I think they're kind of quietly, the Vols, a really interesting team because of that defense.
Yeah, the defense is good. I'm with you on that. And Ohio State's offensive line has been hurt. They've been very banged up this whole second half of the season. That's definitely going to be the matchup to look at. I mean, Tennessee's, I think, got the 4th highest havoc rate in the country on defense. They're just going to be absolutely in Ohio State's face that entire game. But I think the other side of the ball is that, like, Tennessee's offense is, I don't know, man, like, are they going to be able to score a lot of points against Ohio State's defense? It doesn't seem likely, but then again, like a month off, maybe the offense has found some answers. Maybe they figure somehow. Maybe they just run Dylan Sampson 50 times and he just gashes Ohio State after a while. But I'm with you. That's probably the only one other than Indiana, Notre Dame, which, like, again, anything can happen. I don't know. It's the first playoff game. I don't want to pick the Irish with my full chest. I'm a sad, like, I was born in like the mid 90s. I've seen so many crappy Notre Dame teams. I don't feel confident in Notre Dame ever, but I think Tennessee, Ohio State could be really, really interesting. Clemson and Texas, man, that's another one where I'm like, I don't think Clemson's going to be able to score very many points on that Texas
I
defense.
hear you, but it's sort of like how you don't want, no matter how good particular Sparty basketball team is, you still don't want to catch them
Yeah.
in the madness
Yeah,
because they're
right.
used to
It's
it.
still
I don't think you
Clemson.
want to catch Dabo right
Yeah.
now. They don't belong there, but that gives, I think, some percentage of people a devil may care attitude of like, yeah, hey, we got hot at the right time. Yeah, we have no business being here. We almost lost at Pitt. We lost all the other tough games we even played this year. And yet here we are. I think they roll in there with no pressure on them. And Texas, conversely,
Yeah.
has a ton of pressure on them. By the way, the Tennessee one, too, I agree. Nico I and that offense ain't gangbusters. So they'll be careful about, taking their shots. But Ryan Day is plagued by the fear of losing this game. I
True.
mean, that could definitely be like a 6-3 final score kind of game.
That would be so disgusting. Yeah, I'm definitely with you on that. I think like if I have to pick, it's weird picking against Dabo in a playoff game and
Mm-hmm.
saying like I think Sark is the better play caller I know he's the better play caller offensively, I think in that game, but the amount of injuries Texas has had on offense could make that a little bit more interesting. And Clemson still got a great defense, but like, yeah, Dabo's won multiple national championships. He's played in a dozen playoff games. I still sort of give Texas the edge, though, coaching wise, and being able to score against Clemson versus the flip side of that, where Clemson's issue for the last 2 years has been this offense. Like, this offense feasted this year against weaker defenses, but against a defense like Texas, we saw them against Georgia and South Carolina. They weren't able to do much of anything in those games. So that's kind of where I'm comparing it versus, like you mentioned, those some of those ACC opponents. They let Cade Klubnik win the game on a 50-yard scamper at the end, Pitt, and gave up the big upset. And man, shame on them because Clemson's offense, I think, not doing its
So what does
best.
that mean? That would be, yeah. So yeah, all your pals down there in South Florida are raw with Pitt ultimately, right? I guess that's the
I
conclusion. You would
my
be in it right now.
No, I mean my hot take for Miami fans should be mad at Stanford because Stanford, that stupid Louisville Stanford game kicked Louisville out of the rankings. If Louisville doesn't lose that game, those of you that weren't watching, Louisville and Stanford were tied. It was going to go to overtime, and Louisville got this stupid 15-yard penalty, put Stanford in a field goal range, jumped off sides even closer. Stanford kicks a game-winning 52-yard field goal, wins the game. Louisville falls out of the rankings. That was Miami's best win. Miami had no other ranked wins this entire season, and that was it. Like, there's no argument for a 10-2 Miami team with no top 25 wins. Their best win being a middle 20s to 30s Louisville team and a 7-5 Florida team. You're just like that's it. Be mad at Stanford. I guess really be mad at Louisville because they're the ones that shot themselves in the foot in that game. But that's that's who you should be mad at. I guess you could be mad at Pitt too, but I think your fault's with Jeff Brom.
Yeah, yeah, that stands to reason. Man, oh man, yeah, this slate of games already, I'm over the moon about. But yeah, the back to that Ohio State one. That's the one that looms to me about of the four games, and the most likely that we look at it come Sunday morning and say like, well, there's your first upset. I think the Vols stand that way because Ohio State can almost every game just lean on their foe. They have a higher pedigree and they're just straight up brawnier. You saw that against the Hoosiers. Against Michigan, that isn't available to them. I think that's kind of where Tennessee is, a better version of Michigan. Brawny, good defense, maybe doesn't have the high end offense. I think if I were Ohio State, I'd be spooked right now. And because people
Yeah.
already have their doubts about Ryan Day. So
Well,
yeah, I
my
mean, I
my
can't wait for it.
my coworker Lucy Rodine said this week that if Tennessee comes out in maize and blue, watch out. They're going to win that game. They need to wear the maize and blue alternates and really spook Ryan Day. And you know what? I think that's a great point. I think just the fact that they're not called Michigan means that Ohio State has a better
That should
chance
do it.
of winning. Even though Ohio State lost to a Michigan team with a worse quarterback, a much worse offense, and half their like best defenders were out. And so yeah, you don't feel great about it, but then again, they're not Michigan, so
Um, all right, let's dig in on the Irish and going up against the crimson colored Jimmy Chitwoods. You saw the movie. This is the sequel now, the football, the pigskin version of that. I mentioned the curse of Sposta hanging over Ryan Day and James Franklin. So too does it over all the Golden Dome here. Here come the Hoosiers, Cinderella story. Everybody rooting for them. Notre Dame, they hosted, of course. They're the higher pedigree team. Poor IU, just happy to be there. Tail of the tape. Better college town, South Bend or Bloomington?
Oh, don't make me answer that.
Well, I mean, that's just
I
asking.
I think better Notre Dame's got a beautiful, beautiful campus.
Yeah,
And in the last like 10 years or so, a ton of great restaurants have opened up in South Bend. And they've opened up this like nice bike trail now so students can bike down to downtown South Bend. And I
oh,
missed all of
nice.
that. So I can't say because I guess like if you've never been to Notre Dame before, Notre Dame's like a few miles north of South Bend. So it's not really quite like a true South Bend's not like a true college town. They're a little separated, but now their communities are coming closer together, and I think that's great. But I missed out
So
on all of that.
Bloomington is your answer. Bloomington is the answer.
No, I love
Obviously, we
Notre
did.
Dame. I'll say Notre Dame.
You do not think that South Bend is a better college town than Bloomington.
Fine, sure. I'll give you that. Bloomington's gorgeous. I can't say anything bad
The
about
campus
Bloomington.
is better too. Where's the better place
No,
to tailgate? Have you ever tailgated at
I
Bloomington?
haven't tailgated at Bloomington. I've
Oh, it's
only been to
great.
Bloomington once, but not for
Really?
football or
Oh.
anything like that. But I have my best girlfriend went to Indiana. So
This is one of the hidden jewels, and maybe it'll be discovered now that College Game Day keeps going up there for obvious reasons this season. But the I went. I'm not just ripping on South Bend or on Notre Dame. I had always heard about the tailgating up there, and like I mentioned in '91, the Hoosiers went up there. So me and many chums made the journey for the game, and it was just a big parking lot. It was fine. I had a good time and everything. It was not comparable to Bloomington, which next to the stadium, right across the street, are these gentle rolling fields filled with gorgeous trees, colorful in autumn, and little streams running through them and everything else. It's the best. And a case can be made. It was even better before the Hoosiers got good because you felt no compulsion to go into
yeah,
the stadium. You would
I've
go in
heard
for
that.
maybe 20 minutes, be
Right.
like, oh, let's get the hell out of here. The Wolverines are up 6 touchdowns on us, and you just get back to the tailgating. That was a bad. And in South Bend, my experience was colored by the fact that one of the girls I was there with, she went into a porta potty, and some of her friends, not me, but some of her friends thought it would be funny to rock it back and forth. And
Uh-oh.
then they tipped it over, and then
Oh.
all the contents of the porta potty washed over her, and she had to go to the ER because of the poison.
Oh my God, that's disgusting. That's the worst story I've ever heard. I would hate Notre Dame if I were your friend too. That's horrific. Well, I'm not going to argue with you and say that Notre Dame has better tailgating, but I will say I've never had a bad time tailgating at Notre Dame, and I've just
Okay.
straight up never tailgated at Indiana, so I can't compare the two. But I've heard wonderful things about Indiana tailgates. I've
Well,
heard
like Eli says, you
wonderful
can't tailgate
things.
bad. Yeah, you get. How do you
Yeah, right.
tailgate bad, right?
Yeah, you
Not
think a
have
bunch of
booze
Irish
or food.
Catholics in a parking lot can't have a good time? Come on.
Okay, better fight song.
I've never even heard Indiana's fight song.
Indiana, or Indiana, Indiana, we're all for you. Okay, it's not as good. And
Definitely
as a
Notre
matter of
Dame's.
fact, Notre Dame's is not just better in this head to head, it's the best of the 12 teams.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
Better uniform.
Notre Dame's. But again, I've been hearing strange rumors about alternate jerseys. I hope they just stick to the classics. Stick to the classic. It's your first home playoff game ever, first one ever. Just stick to the
It's
classic.
special. They should wear the green. If they, I mean, this is a special occasion, right?
Yeah,
I know.
I
Is
like
it
the
like,
green.
but it's snobbery that'll prevent them because they'll say Indiana ain't worth our green jerseys. The
No,
green
no.
jerseys are
Oh,
supposed to
please.
be
They
only
wore
deployed for
no.
big games.
They wore green jerseys for the Florida State game this year. They pick a game every year that they wear the green jerseys for, and they did it for lowly 1-8 Florida State. So they could do it for Indiana. I think the best case scenario is Notre Dame goes all green, green jersey, green pants, and Indiana goes red. We do like an NFL color rush game for Christmas with the greens and the reds. Wouldn't that be amazing?
Okay, I'll sign. Yeah, that would be nice. That would herald the arrival of the seasons. Yes, I love it. That's a great call on that. Last one. Well, two more. Better quarterback.
I am a huge fan of Riley Leonard. I have nothing bad to say about Curtis Rourke, but Leonard has grown so much this season. I think he's so impressive what he can do with his feet. He can obviously run the ball really well. He's a big guy, but he's super athletic, and his passing has gotten better and better throughout the season too. He had some accuracy issues earlier this season. But I think he is a really, really underrated quarterback in this playoff. But again, I have nothing against Curtis Rourke. I love that he came from a MAC team and he just balled out this year and proved to everyone that he can be a playoff starting quarterback. But yeah, I love Riley Leonard. I just think he's a very versatile quarterback.
Yeah, I like stories like that when guys have to deal with adversity and they can overcome it. I mean, that's a tough spot to be a transfer in South Bend and everybody looking at you and saying like, "Huh, we thought he was going to be better than he's been," and for him to turn it around in the same season is good. You know, I like the medal of that. But Curtis Rourke, the case I made against going into the Ohio State game is the same one I make here. Is will it be diminishing returns for what Cignetti and company are doing, which is that if you've never seen that offense before, I think it allows you to maybe jump the first time. It's a little bit like playing Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. The more you get used to seeing what they're trying to do, the less spooked by it you are. I think that that's the puncher's chance that the Hoosiers have in this one is
Mm.
that offense is something that they just haven't been up against. And maybe it allows them to, you know, maybe by, 20 minutes, game minutes in, the Hoosiers have a couple of touchdowns real quick because Notre Dame
Yeah.
hasn't seen anything like this before.
Yeah, I think one thing that I would keep an eye on. So Al Golden is the Notre Dame defensive coordinator. He loves to blitz. He's just going to
Right.
dial up some blitzes, and Marcus Freeman has done such a good job recruiting at the DB positions. Notre Dame's best player of the season. He's been out since week 7. I want to say Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback, probably going to be a first round draft pick. So unfortunately, they do have to play without him. But the guy that's come in as a true freshman, Leonard Moore, to take over his role has played so well. Xavier Watts, the starting safety, won the Bronco Nagurski Trophy last year. He's a consensus All-American first teamer. He's been outstanding. So Notre Dame is able to blitz so much because they have guys in coverage that are like glue. And so against USC a couple weeks ago, Jordan Mayava was picking on Christian Gray, one of Notre Dame's cornerbacks, the entire game, and he got beat a few times. And I think Indiana's going to try to do something similar there. But by the time the fourth quarter came around, Christian Gray, he picked off Mayava and ran back a 99-yard interception touchdown return. So he's got those skills too. And so there maybe that's a weak link for the passing attack.
I
But
legit agree with you about that very specific point. I think if you try to single up and you're trying to go after Curtis Rourke, there are going to be opportunities because those Hoosier pass catchers individually can make some hay. I think that's
mhm.
the opportunity. Yeah,
Yeah.
I would not be completely floored if the Hoosiers are in this game. I do think ultimately Notre Dame, like I say, is going to be able to lean on them, and that attrition will
Well, I
over
think
60 minutes wear them down.
yeah. I think the difference will come from like what was Indiana's issue against Ohio State? Well, the offensive line couldn't hold up very well against the Ohio State pass rush. Now, Notre Dame's pass rush has been pretty good. Howard Cross has been out for the last few games. He's their best player. He plays in the middle on the defensive line. He'll be back for this game. So I think that's a huge get. They've also got a huge guy next to him, Riley Mills, who's had, I think, 6.5 sacks this season. I think Notre Dame's pass rush is going to really have to show up in this game, and they're going to have to actually get home a lot. And that's going to be something if you can, be able to tell early, like how is that Indiana offensive line holding up? Are they keeping Rourke protected? I think we'll be able to tell early on how that matchup looks. But that's definitely something that I'm interested in seeing and where I think that this game could be made.
One of the most overstated results or thing that people have pointed at way too much in my book, and obviously I'm biased about it, but if the IU punter doesn't fumble the snap a minute to go in Columbus
Yeah.
and then come out of the locker room for the second half and the Hoosiers punt the ball away and they return that one for a touchdown and it's game over and people keep pointing at that like they couldn't keep up with kind of. I mean, in the second half as the Buckeyes started to lean on them more and more, the Hoosiers
Yeah.
wore down.
Right.
But that game, I mean, if that game goes to the half tied at 7, then it breaks obviously very differently in the third quarter, and Ohio State can't apply the same script that they did when they had a 2 touchdown lead. I I think that is what should scare Notre Dame. To me, I mean, I
For
know people
sure.
keep saying like, "Well, Michigan too. They couldn't hang with Michigan." Yeah, they have a deficit in terms of brawn, but there are ways that they might be able to make it up. All right, here's a question for you.
Uh-huh.
So your final pick, you're taking Notre Dame.
I don't want to pick Notre Dame. Don't make me. I'll pick Indiana. It's my final pick. Emotional hedge.
I don't believe I don't believe you believe that. I want you to go tell that to the person looking back at you in the mirror, and then I'll believe it. Okay, we talk about tailgating, and you
Uh-huh.
talk a fair amount about your passion for Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
If you could have two characters from Lord of the Rings tailgating with you for this game, who would they be? Actually, give
Oh
me one,
man.
two, three. One,
Have
two,
you
three.
have
Good
you
place
watched
show.
any of the Amazon Prime series?
A little bit. I'll be honest with you.
Okay.
I couldn't get into it. I
The second
tried
season
an
was really
episode or
good. Okay,
yeah.
because
Okay.
I was gonna pick the Dark Lord Sauron, but then he would probably trick me. He'd probably trick me into doing something really evil. So I probably shouldn't
Yeah.
invite him to my tailgate. But he's
That's
very
appropriate. That's it's right next to touchdown Jesus. There's Sauron. Now you have everybody on your side, don't you?
Oh my, can I just pick a top four? Because it would be the four hobbits from the Fellowship of the Ring, obviously.
It would
Merry,
be fun.
Pippin,
Yeah.
Sam, and Frodo. They're the best drinking buddies in the world. They always go to the Green Dragon and have a few pints.
Yeah.
I love the hobbits. I spiritually am a hobbit, I think. And I can't think of anyone else I'd want to tailgate with. They eat, they drink, like they're the perfect tailgate guests.
Now that you mention it, yeah, I guess they're the equivalent of leprechauns in Middle Earth, right?
Yeah, they're like little short little guys and with big feet. Yeah. I mean, I love the hobbits. Even, Frodo gets corrupted by the ring and he gets a little moodier and a little sadder,
Yeah.
but he can still come to my tailgate. It's fine. I'll cheer him up.
I'm glad you're with me, Sam. That's That's Jessica standing outside of the stadium, outside of
Yeah.
I'm glad you're here, Samwise Gamgee. Um,
It's
the
a great impression.
Thank you.
That was good.
I think I go. I think I like Legolas is a little bit distant,
Hmm.
and what's his name? Mole Man.
Gimli.
What Gimli? He's fun, but he's
Can be a good
self-aware how
drinking
much fun
partner.
he.
Yeah.
I think he'd be fun to drink with. Like he's the guy. Like we what is that? You have a chugging contest? Like Gimli would win. So like
Hmm.
you want him on your side for those
Yeah.
sorts of drinking activities, but I want Ranger. I think he's cool.
Oh,
Like I
yeah.
want him around, might feel nice and safe. If
Yeah.
any ne'er do well steps to
Very
me, I know I'm
safe.
taken care of. Yeah.
If we're just doing guys that I would invite to drink with because I think they're good looking, he's also on that. Him and Sauron are my one, two.
Sauron's good looking.
In the Amazon Prime show, yes. And that's how
Is
he
he
is. He's
really?
so deceptive and he's so evil. And everyone's like, but he's so charming. It's great. Honestly, if you give it another shot and watch season two,
I
season two
will.
is a lot better.
Somebody told me, like within the last 6 months or year, this is one of those ones. Like I know a lot of handsome guys, which guys are handsome. Like George
Hmm.
Clooney, I know is handsome, and Brad Pitt, I can tell is handsome. But Legolas he's on the short list of like I had no idea that women thought he was attractive until I
When
had
I
no
was
idea.
when I was in fourth grade, I had a t-shirt that said I love Orlando, and people would always ask me like, "Oh, did you get that at Disney World?" And I was like, "No, it's for Orlando Bloom," because I had such a huge crush on him from The Lord of the Rings and the Pirates of the Caribbean. So yeah, Orlando Bloom is a very attractive actor. I think as Legolas, the hair, the makeup, it's not his best look, but he's still, he smolders.
Orlando Bloom. I mean, like I could walk right past him on the street and I'd be like five and a
I had
half. I don't know.
posters of
Like
him in my bedroom growing up, so this is you're barking up the wrong tree here. I'm
okay,
never
so
gonna
I'm
agree
wrong.
with you.
I'll let you go then with this one then.
Okay.
I've been contacted by the social media world and informed I have over the years used to
Hmm.
do annually around this time of the year I would do the pie off. It was a great invention by me because I would have all my colleagues make pies and then they would bring them into the office and then I would take bites of each one and determine which was the best, who was the winner, me,
Hmm.
because I was eating
Right.
pie all day and
Yeah.
everybody was delivering them to me like I was a prince. Um, I hear you are a pie maker of some repute. I'm curious. I think, by the way, that there are pies that are better suited to summer. My wife makes a peach cobbler that beats the band, but
Mm,
you wouldn't make that. I mean, Christmas
yeah.
time, you wouldn't bring out a peach cobbler. What are the best pies at the holiday season? Win,
Ooh,
place, show. Win, place, show. Give them to me.
okay. Well, I just made a apple pie for
Okay.
Thanksgiving. That was like an apple pie with like caramel filling. That was one of the best pies I think
Ooh,
I've ever made. Around
okay.
Christmas, I always make this sounds different, but trust me, it's really good. It's a cranberry curd tart. And the crust is hazelnuts. It's like hazelnuts and flour, like ground up. And then the inside is like a creamy, like sweet cranberry curd. And then you decorate it with like
Hmm.
cranberries and oranges. I know it kind of sounds weird, but it's really good because it's sweet, but it's like a little tangy, so it's not overly sweet. If you like cranberries, you definitely like it. But I know cranberries are hit or miss for people. But that's usually what I make for Christmas Day. A nice cranberry curd tart. I don't really make that many pies for Christmas. I make,
Yeah.
like the old Pittsburgh tradition of like the cookie table at the wedding.
Yes.
That's my goal every Christmas season is just make so many cookies that I could like feed a wedding of 300 people in Pittsburgh. So I
What
baked
are the
like
one I like
600 cookies this
the
week.
ones that you never see any other time of the year, and there's no good reason why we don't eat them year round, is the peanut butter blossom. The
Oh,
like those are so good. And the I didn't even know that's where I always associate them with the Hershey's Kiss.
yeah.
Stuck into
I'm
them.
I made those this weekend with like pistachio cream in the middle. Oh,
Ooh.
they were so good. Yeah, I'm a big cookie person this time of year. Like I cranked out 1,000 lemon ricotta cookies with sprinkles on them. I made a whole sheet of rainbow, like the Italian cookies with like the green, white, and red layer with the chocolate on top. And I brought them all to work. My coworkers, some of them said thank you, some of them didn't.
Really? It's not no. I think it's a fascinating, like there's an ebb and a flow to the pastry world, to the desserts that are popular, like cupcakes,
Hmm.
now I
They
think
had
they're
a
pretty
moment.
far in the
Yeah.
rear. Yeah, but
Hmm.
that was like a decade ago.
Hmm. For
Cookies are
sure.
back.
Oh
Cookies are
yeah.
back now.
Fancy
Um,
cookies. Like I've been seeing recipes for very intricate, like designed cookies, cookies that look like specialty cakes, all sorts of things. And you know what? The more the merrier. I like to try everything.
you know what's interesting? Or maybe it's not, but I had the occasion to talk with your pal Mike Gola Jr. about
Hmm.
crumble cookie. A lot of people are down on those. Where do you come down
Really?
there?
I've never had it.
Yeah. Really? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
maybe I'll have to ship you as thanks some crumble
Don't
cookies there.
bother
No,
if Indiana wins. I don't want to hear from you ever again.
Smetana, you're dynamite. I appreciate all the time. We've kept you for way too long already. All the best to you. So you're not gonna make the journey up to South
Ugh.
Bend, huh?
I am. I'm flying out tomorrow, actually.
Wait a second. Wait a second. Wait a second. You are gonna be in the
I
swamp.
am gonna be there. Yeah.
Oh, well, well, well. Lucky
Hmm.
you. All right, maybe
Be
you'll run
waving
into
my
some live.
terrible towel.
Don't call it that. Don't, that's only gonna make the pox worse if you try
Oh
to call it
no.
a terrible towel. It's just a piece of cloth that you're waving around at Indiana. Tell them to wear the green.
I'll
That
let
would
him
be my
know.
tip.
Yeah, I'll
All
let
right.
him know.
Smetana, you're the best. All the great work on Levitard, Meadowlark Media. Track her down. You'll be better for it. Enjoy the game and enjoy
Thank
all the
you.
games. If I hope you have some reason to keep watching because it'd be hard to watch
Oh
those
my
three games
God.
on Saturday if your team loses on Friday,
Or
right?
or Notre Dame loses and then the Ravens beat the Steelers on Saturday. I will expire. My Christmas will be ruined. Oh, and then if the Chiefs win on Christmas against the Steelers, oh,
Okay, now you brought it up.
this could be a bad 4 days
I
for
didn't want to
me.
hold you up with our mutual interest, which is the Pittsburgh Steelers. Do you think they can survive and at least win the division? The two paths are beat Baltimore and Charm City. It looks like without George
Yeah.
Pickens once again. But the other side is beat KC and Cincy and Pittsburgh, and you still win the division.
I mean, the Chiefs have been getting away with some crappy games this year, so I don't want to like discount that game as like I don't think the Steelers are going to win it, even though the Chiefs are obviously the number one seed right now in the AFC. But they need Pickens back, man. That offense against the Eagles with like nothing downfield was brutal to watch. But I also like they beat the Ravens once. They could do it again. Boswell kicked 6 field goals. What's seven? Let's do 7 this time. I like the Steelers defense. Like I like them so much. And they obviously have some health issues too on that side, but I think they could I think they could do it. I really hope they do it. I really hope they just
Boy,
beat the Ravens.
it really would be nice just because, I mean, one, they're in the playoffs after week 15, which is a luxury that Steelers fans
Crazy.
haven't gotten for a long. Imagine if they had the division crown settled
Oh,
and still 2 games. It's like, oh yeah, Mahomes is coming to town on Christmas. So
yeah.
what? We don't
Yeah.
need. So
We
what?
don't need it. Yeah.
We may bring back. We may let Bubby Brister play that game just for fun. Just for fun. Um, all right, Smetana, have a great time in South Bend. And I was going to say bring home a winner, but I hope you enjoy the game is what I'll say to you.
Thank you for having me.
Best to Samwise Gamgee and your other pals out there.